So there's a four-letter word that I use way too much. Not that one, though. It's the word more. Don't you want more? Doesn't most of our lives revolve around wanting more? You work, you plan, you dream, you save, you invest because you want more. If I could just have just a little bit more friends, more approval from people, more respect, acknowledgement, more time, more power, more education, more square footage, more to eat, more drink, more high, more relationships, more sex, more family, more love, more money. We just want more, just a little bit more. And the reason that we want more is because we're dissatisfied. And we think that if we had just a little bit more, just a little bit, that we'd be happy. But what happens when you get more? You just want more. You know this, right? You just want more. The new car smell wears off awfully quick. How many of us have gone on vacation and gone home and said, man, I'm exhausted. I need a vacation from my vacation, right? Because we get a little bit and then we want a little more. Just a little bit more. I think the greatest lie of our time is if I get a little bit more, if I had just a little bit more, I'd be happy. Just a little bit. Happiness is right around the corner, just around the bend. If I had just a little bit more, I'd be satisfied. I think this is particularly true in the area of money. How many of us have said, you know what? I don't want to be rich. I just want to be comfortable. Just a little breathing room. I don't need it all. I just need a little bit more. And the message that a little bit more would change everything is all around us. This is what advertising is. Advertising says, oh, you just need one more product. You just need to drive this car, own this thing, live here, have this family, have this lifestyle. It's so close. You can just grab a hold of it. If you just a little bit more and life will be good. And that is everywhere, and it's hitting you every day. They did a study in the 1970s. The average American saw 500 advertisements each day. They redid that study in 2020, and the average of us sees more than 10,000 advertisements every day, and it's just getting crammed in your face. If you just had a little bit more, then everything would be good. Today I want to push on this question a little bit and ask, is it possible, can we be content with what we have right now? Is happiness only found in a little bit more? If I just had that, if I could just get there, if I could just get past this thing, if I could just accomplish this, then everything would be, or is it possible that we could be content with what we have right now? So we're going to get right into it. 1 Timothy chapter 6. If you got a Bible with you, get it out. If it's on your phone, follow along there. We'd love for you to track with us there. 1 Timothy chapter 6. And let's just push on this question a little bit. Is it possible to be content, or do we need more? Can we be satisfied with what we have right now? So Paul is writing a letter to his very good friend Timothy. Timothy is in the city of Ephesus. If there's any place in the Bible that resembles our modern world, it is Ephesus. Ephesus is, yes, the city in antiquity, but very modern. There are great schools in Ephesus. There are wonderful neighborhoods in Ephesus. They have medical advancements in Ephesus. There is fine dining. There is entertainment. There is shopping malls in Ephesus. It is the financial capital of the world, very cosmopolitan, very our culture. There are luxuries and conveniences everywhere. And Timothy is there, and he's pastoring a church of just regular folks, people like you and me, who are just trying to figure out, what does it look like? What does it mean to follow Jesus with my life? Like, what does that look like? And apparently one of the things that they're struggling with is they've fallen into this trap where they're thinking, you know what, life's pretty good, but if we just had a little bit more, then we'd be really happy. These people who love Jesus, they're going, hey, we've given our lives to Jesus. He's forgiven us of our sins. We've surrendered to him. Like, life's pretty good, but if we could just have a little bit more. I mean, no offense, Jesus, you're great, but if we could just have a little bit more. And they're getting caught in this trap, and there's some false teaching going on, but they're getting caught in this trap of, if I could just have a little bit more. And so one of the things Paul, in his letter to Timothy, one of the things he addresses is speaking to this idea of discontentment. And I think this is going to resonate with you. And again, push on this question, can we be content with what we have now, or do we always need more? So let me read just a few verses here. Let me just read through this, and then we'll come back and chop it up a little bit. 1 Timothy 6, starting in verse 7. The Apostle Paul is writing, and he says, "For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction." He says, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have even wandered away from the faith and have pierced themselves with many griefs." So this group of people at Ephesus who's always chasing more, and Paul in this section of this letter is sort of addressing that. Let me zoom out for a second. Let's fly a little bit higher than this passage just for a minute. Let me ask you a question, okay? So Christ follower, if you're here and you're a follower of Jesus, I want you to think about something. You've given your life to Jesus, you've surrendered to him, you're trying to follow him with your life, he's forgiven you of your sins. I want you to think about this. Have you ever said, or I want you to think about a time where you did say this or did feel this, because you've been there, maybe years ago, maybe this week, maybe today, whatever. You've been in this space, and what you've said is, probably lots of times you have said, if I have Jesus, I have everything that I need. You've said that, you've thought that, and it's not just like this kind of warm and fuzzy thing. You meant it. You believed that. If I have Jesus, I have everything that I need. Okay, these people in Ephesus, I am certain that they felt that. I am certain that they said that they shared that sentiment that many of us have expressed, that if I have Jesus, I have everything that I need. So what happens, right? How do we get from that? Because we've been there, right? Many of us have been there. If I have Jesus, I have everything I need. How do we get from there to, if I just had a little bit more? Again, no offense to Jesus. We love Jesus. But if I just had a little bit more, then life would be great. A little bit more money, a little bit more power, a little bit more friends, whatever it is, right? If I just had a little more stuff, how do we get sucked into that feeling if I just had a little bit more? Here's what I think happens, okay, for all of us. I think often we stop focusing on what we have and we look at the stuff we don't have. Right? You've done this. Like, we've all done this, right? We stop focusing on what we do have, and we go, oh, there's this thing over here I don't have. If I just had that, a little bit more of that, then things would be really good, right? And we lose focus on what we do have. Now, some of us have more or less than others, but like all of us have been given things from God, and we lose focus on what we have, and we start to focus on what we don't have, right? My son had a birthday recently. He got money for his birthday. He was super excited, gonna go to the store, gonna buy something that he really wanted. He was so excited to have just a little bit of money, get to the store, and it's just out of his price range, this thing that he wants, right? It's just a little bit too much. It's more than he has. So what happens? He's devastated. Before, he was very excited about what he had. That's all that mattered. He was ecstatic. This is what I've been given, and it's awesome. And now the only thing he can see is what I don't have. And this is all of us, right? This is not new. This is what we do. This was not new in Ephesus. It happens with us. We take our focus off of what we have, and we start to focus on what we don't. And I'm telling you, this is the original dilemma. This is the original struggle of humanity. Think back for a minute. Think back to the very beginning, to the Garden of Eden. What happens? Adam and Eve are there, right? God makes Adam and Eve. He makes them a garden. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. God says, it's yours. Everything that is here is yours. There's plants, there's trees, there's animals, there's beauty, there's everything that you could ever want. It's here. And it seems like everything you could imagine is there. They have health, they have food, they have shelter, they have relationship, they have jobs to be productive, they have spending time with God, they have everything that they need. What happens? Ooh, there's that one tree. But you don't need that tree. You have like 1,000,000 trees. You have everything you could want. Yeah, but there's that tree over there and it looks pretty and we kind of want it, but it doesn't matter. You have all these other beautiful trees. Yeah, but it has fruit on it and fruit looks good. All your trees have fruit on them. It's great. You have everything that you need. Yeah, but there's this thing over here. We just want that fruit. But you can't handle it. That's not yours. But all of this is yours. I know, but we just really want that thing, the shiny little thing over here, right? And it is to their destruction. This is not a new thing. This has been going on since the beginning. This is the original temptation. God has placed all kinds of things in my hand, and I want this one. Instead of focusing on being grateful for these, we focus on the stuff that we don't have. There's another story in the Bible, because this tracks forward, right? All the way back to Adam and Eve, and then you track forward. There's another story in the Bible. Israelites are in the promised land, and they have everything that they need, and God has just done incredible things for them. He rescued them from slavery in Egypt. He parted an ocean so that they could walk through it, right? For 40 years. They lived in a barren desert, and every day God provided them food. It's unbelievable. He's with them. He is leading them in battle. There are times when the Israelites go out on the battlefield, they don't even have to fight because God takes out the enemy. And God has said to them, in all ways, I am with you, always. I am leading you. And he has said, I am myself. I am your king. One day, some of the Israelites come up to this guy, Samuel. Samuel's the leader. God has called Samuel to lead the nation of Israel at the time. They come up to Samuel and they go, Samuel, we had an idea. We'd like a king. And Samuel goes, wonderful. I love that desire is in your heart. You have a king. It's God. God says himself. He says, I am your king. So he goes, great, you have exactly what you want. You have everything you need. You have God himself, the greatest king. You have him as your king. They go away, they think about it. They come back in 1 Samuel chapter 8, it tells a story. They go, you know what? We want to be like every other country. That's what they say. We want to be like every other nation. We want a king who will go before us and lead us into battle. So they have, incredibly, God as their king. But they look around and they go, but everybody else has someone they can point to. Everyone else has a human being. Everybody else has a leader, a physical king. We want that. This is what we do. We look at everything that we have, and then we turn our attention to everything that we don't have, and we forget everything, all the good things that we have. This is the pattern of humanity, that we stop focusing on what we have, even though it was good enough. Remember? You got it. Whatever God gave you, great. That's enough. And we said, even if it's just Jesus, it's enough. That's all we need. I don't need anything else. And then we get distracted and we start going, there's the shiny thing over here that I'd really like. I think this would make me happy if I could just have that. This is not new. This is not just us. And this is what Paul is speaking to in this section in Timothy, where we lose focus on what we have, and we have this flawed belief that whatever this other thing is, the more, right? If I just had a little bit more money, more stuff, more of the perfect family, more, right? If we just had that, then this flawed belief that would make us happy, that would satisfy us. And Paul is speaking into this, and he's going, no. We've been struggling with this since the beginning. We take our eyes off of what we have, only look at the things that we don't have. So he's pulling us back in a little bit. Let's go back to this passage, to 1 Timothy. Remember, we're chasing this question, can we be content with what we have right now? Let me go back to this passage in 1 Timothy, and let's just walk through it a little bit, just verse by verse here just for a second, and see what it shows us. So here it is again. Go back to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7. Paul said, for we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. We brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. So my kids are all adopted, right? And especially my two youngest ones, they showed up on our doorstep when they were a little bit older. They came with some luggage in one hand and a bag of toys in the other. So I wasn't there. I don't know what they came into the world with. Maybe that's what they came into the world with, a little suitcase full of clothes and some toys. I have no idea. I wasn't there. My oldest daughter, we brought her home from the hospital, though. I was there when she came into the world. And parents, you'll know this, right? When you have a baby, when you're going to bring them home from the hospital, you have to take clothes for them to wear home, right? The stork doesn't deliver them in like a cute little, Carter's outfit that's like perfect and wonderful. They come, guess what? With nothing, right? We came into this world. You came into this world with nothing. And Paul goes, hey, just in case you're wondering, you're also going to leave this world with nothing. And yet, for whatever reason, we focus in this life on stuff. We become dependent on, if I just had more, that would satisfy me. And he's like, no, your existence from beginning and then to end, it's nothing. You came into the world with nothing. You leave the world with nothing. The Old Testament, Job says something similar. He says, you came into the world naked, and guess what? You're going to leave the world naked, beginning and the end. You're naked. If you die naked, please don't call me. Call someone else. That's fine. But you, like entering the world, leaving the world with nothing. Why do we focus on stuff? So Paul is calling us back, saying, let's get our eyes off of temporary stuff. Let's get our eyes off of more, just want more and more and more, and let's focus on things that last. Keep going, verse 8. He says, but if we have food and clothing, right? He says we will be content with that. So we brought nothing into the world, we can take nothing out of the world, but if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Just stop here for a second. I want you to notice that Paul is not calling Christ followers to a life of destitution. In fact, the opposite. He's actually acknowledging there are some things that we need in this life to satisfy, to bring about a peace, a contentment. He mentions the basics, right? Food, clothing, things like shelter. Like we need those things to be somewhat at peace, somewhat satisfied. Without those things, it's like if I'm starving to death or freezing to death and somebody goes, oh, just be content. It's like I'm not able to. I need the basic things, right? And by the way, it's the church and the people of the church's job to make sure we kind of all take care of each other. We have those things, right? But we need those basic things. Here's what's interesting to me about what he says here. He says, if we have food and clothing, then we will be content. Do you remember when Jesus was on earth, Sermon on the Mount, and Jesus was talking to the people about, hey, don't worry. Remember, he says we don't have to worry about anything, but he mentions two things by name. Do you remember what he mentions? Food and clothing, right? It's the exact two same things. Jesus says, do not worry about what you will eat or what you will wear, right? He says that God feeds the birds and he dresses the flowers. How much more will he take care of each one of us? Isn't it interesting that Paul picks up on the exact two things where Jesus tells us don't worry about anything, but there's two things that I know you need, food and clothing, and God's going to provide those for you. Paul picks up on those exact same things, almost as if to say, hey, I know you need the basics. I'm not saying you don't need the basics, but trust God because God has promised he's going to provide those things for you. Food, clothing, the basics, right? He's like, God's going to take care of all of that. And if God takes care of all of that, which God has promised to do, then we move on to the second part of that statement. If we have food and clothing, he says, then we will be content with that. Content. It means that we have peace because we have enough. It means that we are not lacking. It means our focus isn't on getting more. It doesn't mean we don't dream and work and invest and save and try. We do, but our peace isn't dependent on if I just had more. So here's what I think Paul is saying. You ready? I think he is saying, speaking to Christ followers here, I think he is saying that if we have food to eat and clothes to wear, that then we have the capacity to be content. Now, he's not yet saying we are content. That's a choice that we as individuals have to make. But he is saying the ability is there. It is possible for us, if we have food and clothing, if we have those basic needs met, he's saying it is possible for us to be content. Right? No little exception there. It's possible if we had this thing and this thing and this thing. He goes, if your basic needs are met, it is possible for us to be content. Again, he's not saying we're there yet. Let's keep going. He's not saying we're there yet, but it is possible for us to be content. Now, I hear a little bit of pushback here, right? You go, I don't live in fantasy land, so I don't have a job, I don't have any money, I have to pay my rent, my marriage is a mess, someone that I love is sick. Like, how can you just say, oh yeah, sure, it's fine, just be content? Listen, again, it doesn't mean that we don't work and dream and plan and live real lives. If your marriage is messed up, go to counseling and get help. If your finances are a mess and you can't, sit down with someone who can help you make sense of these things, of course. But Paul is just saying that once our basic needs are met, getting more isn't the solution. If you are unhappy, if you are discontent, if you are not satisfied, more is not going to fix that. And we get it in our head, if I just had that, if I just had what he has, if I just had what she has, if I just had her job, then I'd be happy. If I just drove his car, man, life would be good. If I just had that person's, and let's be honest, we get out. If I just had their spouse, I'd be happier. If I just had their home. If my kids were like their kids, right? If we just a little more, we start to get more, turns into envy. And what he's saying is more is not going to fix anything. If you're dissatisfied, if you're unhappy. He said something similar in a previous letter that he wrote to the Philippians. He says this in Philippians chapter 4. He says, "For I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. And I have learned the secret of being content." Oh, this is good. He's going to give us like the secret sauce. How do we be content? I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this. What does he mean I can do all this? He means I can be content in every circumstance. How does he do it? I can do all this, he says, through him who gives me strength. And what Paul is saying is he's like, hey, I've learned some stuff along the way. This is like old man wisdom he's giving us here. He's had some experiences. Paul, who has been respected and wealthy and had all kinds of luxury, and Paul, who has spent years in prison, he goes, here's what I've learned. You ready? He says, Jesus is the only thing that will bring you contentment. He's the only one that will bring you contentment. It's not more. It's not more friends, more money, more power. He goes, no, literally, it is only a relationship with Jesus that will bring contentment. And that is, that's not churchy. That's not pie in the sky. This is the living reality. That everything else, every more you want to get your hands on, it will eventually leave you disappointed and frustrated. The fulfillment of more, of what you want, the fulfillment of your discontentment is not happiness. It's not satisfaction. It's just more discontentment. This was true back to Adam and Eve. It is true now. We believe this lie that if we just had more is all we need. Happiness is right around the corner. It's a stone's throw away. I can taste it. I can smell it. It's right there. Happiness is there. If it's just a little, I just get a little bit more. And what Paul is saying is, if the more that you're after is not more Jesus, you're still going to be miserable. Watch this. Keep going. Because he's going to talk about what happens to our soul when we get into this place of chasing more and more. And I think this is going to resonate with you. He says this, listen to it again. Those who want to get rich, again, I know we go, I don't need to be rich. I just need a little bit more, right? He's talking to us. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many, many foolish and harmful things that plunge people into ruin and destruction, he says. Two words that jump out to me, if you want them here, is the word trap and the word plunge. Trap us into foolish and harmful desires. The pursuit of more is a trap. It is like being stuck in a trap and you can't get out. You might as well gnaw your leg off because you ain't getting out of that. Like, it is miserable. It is awful. And you know it. You know that keeping up with the Joneses is horrible. It is an endless trap. It is a cycle that is so hard to break out of. He uses the other word plunge into ruin. It's a word for drowning. The pursuit of more, always chasing more, it feels like drowning. Like your every breath is just gasping to survive. He says, those who want to be rich, who want to chase more, will fall into ruin, will live their lives as if they're drowning. It will destroy your sanity. Chasing more, pursuing more always will destroy your sanity, your life, your soul. He says, verse 10, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered away from the faith. This pursuit of more and pursuit of money has actually turned people away from Jesus. They've wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Notice he doesn't say money is bad. He does not say that. He says the love of money is the problem. It's the pursuit of money. How do you know if you love money? You think about it all the time. You listen to it. It tells you, makes promises, right? It tells you things. You like to show it to people. You feel good just knowing that it's there in your pocket. It makes you feel something, right? That's the love of money. That's loving it. Ecclesiastes says, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied. And we have been chasing satisfaction since the Garden of Eden. If I just had a little bit more. If I just had a little bit more. And you know what the thing is? It's never worked, but we each think we're the exception. Okay, maybe it didn't work for someone else, but it'll work for me. If I just had a little bit more, then I'd be satisfied. If I just had, I'm not asking for a lot. If I just had a little bit more, then I would be content. We think it's going to work, and it doesn't. So what's the solution? If satisfaction isn't in chasing stuff, what is it? Can we ever be content? Look at verse 11. Paul says, but you, man of God, woman of God, son or daughter of the King, you, brother, sister, you, flee from all of this. Run away from chasing more, from the pursuit of more. He says, flee from all of this and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. It's not more stuff that's going to make you happy. It's not more stuff that's going to satisfy. It's not more power. It's not more money. You know what it is? It's more Jesus. That's what's going to satisfy you. It's more Jesus. It's more the things of God. Instead of thinking that more power is going to satisfy you, what if it's more purity? Instead of thinking that having more, if I just had more money, I'd be satisfied, what if it's giving away more money? What if instead of complaining that I don't have what my neighbor has, we look at the other neighbor on the other side who doesn't have as much and we say, how can I use what I do have to help them? This is what satisfies. It's more things of God. It's more Jesus. It's being a giver instead of a consumer, instead of a taker. Are you a giver or are you a taker? You're selfish, right? Do you amass things to serve yourself or to serve others? What if it's not more stuff that will make us happy, but it's more Jesus? It's more things of God. So instead of waking up in the morning and saying, how can I get more? It's how can I serve more? How would that change the way you just lived? Instead of looking at your relationships, looking at your marriage and saying, oh, if we just did things my way, if I had more say, then things would be good. What if instead it was, God, how can I serve my spouse? How can I actually give more of myself to my spouse and my family? How would your entire workplace be different? If instead of being selfish, instead of being a taker, instead of saying, what can I get out of my employees, my coworkers, my customers, what if you said, how can I serve them? How can I look at things like, what does it say? How can I pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, gentleness as it relates to those around me? You see what Paul is doing? He's saying, oh, there's more that will satisfy you, but it's not the more that you've been chasing. It's not more stuff. That's a trap. You're drowning. All the way back to Adam and Eve, they've been trying to go after more and more and more. And he says the only thing that's going to bring peace to your soul and to actually satisfy you and bring contentment is more Jesus. That's it. It's not the more other stuff. It's not more keeping up with the Joneses. The Joneses are going to hell. They have their own problems. You don't want to keep up with them. It's more godliness. It's more generosity. It's more holiness. It's more gentleness. It's more love. It's more joy. It's more peace. You want contentment in your life? There's the answer. It's more Jesus. Let me just finish with, let me give you a simple question to reflect on this week. we're in this series, we're talking about money and giving and such, but I just felt like the Lord pushing on us this week to go, when are you going to look at everything that I've given you? And stop looking at everything that you don't have. When you be grateful for what you have and stop focusing on this shiny thing over here that you want. Be satisfied with what I've given you. Here's my question for you, just to chew on this week, is what more would satisfy you? What's the more that you think is going to make you happy? What's that shiny thing? You're not focused on what you have. It's just, if I could just get here, if this project could just be done, if this, whatever it is, more. What is it? More money? More power? Better job? More shopping? More hunting? More? What is it? What's the more that would satisfy you? And where does more Jesus fit into that? And I guess I just encourage you today, just push on you a little bit, that instead of maybe if you think about how you talk to God, maybe this week, just how you ask him, how you pray to him. Instead of asking God for more stuff, what if we just ask God for more of him? God, help me. God, help me to be grateful for the things that you've given me. God, help me to not lose my focus from what you've entrusted me with. And again, some of us have more, some of us have less, whatever, but we've all been given so much by God. He's been good to us and gracious to us. And what if we just said, God, would you help me to be content with that? God, would you help me to not fall into the trap of pursuing more, of always wanting more, because some of you, you're drowning in this. This is a reality. Like that pursuit of more, it is so front and center in your life. And so what would it be to say, God, help me to serve others instead of taking from everyone. Help me to be grateful instead of a spoiled child. Help me, God, to know that the only more is going to satisfy me is more Jesus. Let me pray for you and we'll get out of here. God, thank you for being generous with us. Father, thank you for your word. God, may we simply say thank you. May we simply be grateful for what we have. You know the ways that we're distracted. You know the ways that we see all the more and we think, if I just had that, if I had a little bit more, then I'd be happy. God, the only thing we need, we've said it, we've felt it, you've told us, we know that it's true, though we struggle with it, we know that it's true. The only thing we really need is Jesus, and you have given him to us abundantly. And you've given us more. So God, would you help us to be thankful? God, would we also know that you're a Father who wants to hear what we need? And so if we do have needs, you want to hear him. You want us to say, God, I really need this. God, I really want this. May we know that you're a good dad who provides what we need. As we follow you, you lead us to good things and to safety and to peace. Thank you for everything that we have. Thank you for Jesus. You withhold